The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Duke basketball is 10-0 to open up ACC play.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The win for the Blue Devils last night over NC State. What a crazy game it was for Duke. They find themselves in a hole, one of their toughest and the largest deficits that they've seen all season long. At one point, they trailed 35-22, a 13-point deficit. Duke trailed by 14 earlier in the year against Louisville. That was the worst, but nearly was in the toughest hole that they've had all season long, and they've got to make a mad dash to get back out in front. They held NC State scoreless for over 8 minutes of game action to get that second half started, and then give credit to NC State, Ben. They just wouldn't go away, and this one, Duke had to kind of win it out real gritty down the stretch.
Man, I wasn't sure if I was looking at the NC State Wolfpack or the 2015-16 Warriors. That was crazy. They had dudes that I knew good and well weren't shooting well this entire season, that were just drilling everything. And it's difficult to deal with games like that, right? But I think time and time again we discuss the fact that Cooper Flagg does literally whatever is necessary to win basketball games. He's one of the most impressive players that I've ever seen in college basketball, and today is one of the most shining examples of that, I think.
Yeah, he was sensational. Every single way you look at it, when Duke needed a bucket or needed something, Cooper Flagg was able to step up and get the job done. In the first half, Duke was able to get a lot of three-point looks and makes from Con Knippel. He made 3 3-pointers on the game, all of them coming there in the first half to kind of right the ship there. I thought it was an excellent game for Sion James for Duke. Pat Gamba made a couple of really key plays down the stretch. Following his first ever scoreless game with no shot attempts, Kamen Malawach came back and had a couple of nice moments throughout the game before the very end, when he had a quite unfortunate exit as he's vomiting on the floor and has to be rushed back to the locker room. You don't see that every day, Ben.
No, I hope Malawach is all right. I hope that the crazy that passed out, the student section, is all right too. Just a crazy turn of events that might have ultimately helped Duke in a weird way, because you watch the way that second half is progressing, and the offense is running almost entirely through Cooper Flagg.
Yeah.
And that dude looks beat, just utterly exhausted, but he's doing whatever he needs to do. But then, Malawach throws up, and it's like, well, that was weird. But then it takes a very long time to get back on the floor.
Yeah, shout out to those managers, man. I mean, that is the definition of other duties as assigned. I would imagine they didn't go into that game thinking, yeah, we're going to clean up vomit on the floor. And, yeah, wow. I do not envy that whatsoever.
Who knew they had that many towels?
Exactly.
Must have been 50 towels down.
No kidding. But that's a good point, though, because Flagg did look absolutely gassed down the stretch. And then, yeah, certainly thinking about the young lady in the student section there in the Camera Crazies world, where there's a stoppage in play, so much commotion. The TV broadcast kind of follows what's going on, and she's carried off out in another kind of delay there, where NC State and Duke are able to kind of catch their breath. And credit to Duke, because they came out on the strong end of that after those breaks.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you mentioned Patrick earlier as well, because the play of the game for me was that play. Shot clock's running down at the end. Cooper Flagg looks like he's going to shoot it. Everybody in the stadium, everybody watching, thinks that he's about to shoot it, except for him and Patrick. And he gets that tip pass right to Pat. He puts it in with 1 second to go. I mean, that's beautiful. I think, say what you want about Patrick, but he has done a good job stepping up, and he did a tremendous job at the end of that one, staying steady.
Unbelievable pass from Cooper, and it was in one fluid motion that Gamba fields it and lays it up and able to beat the shot clock there as it expires. I'm also thinking about a key play in the second half where NC State's cut it to a one-possession game. And at the top of the key, Cooper Flagg makes only one three-pointer in the entire game, and it was one where he was fouled, turns into a 4-point play. Again, just when Duke needed something to be done, they turned to number 2, and Cooper Flagg delivered and just kept making highlight play after highlight play. 28 more points added to his career scoring ledger thus far. Those averages are just going to keep going up, man. So much for a slow start offensively.
Man, if you're Janai Broome, you're just kicking walls right now, right? Because you're having one of the best seasons we've seen in college basketball.
No doubt.
And you're probably not going to win National Player of the Year because Cooper Flagg is having one of, if not the greatest freshman season in the history of the sport. And, I mean, it's just unreal what he's able to do on the floor.
Yeah, he played above the rim once again, had a couple of big dunks tonight. He had one in the first half that he did not make the dunk, or maybe it was early second half, but went up with the right hand, was fouled on the play. And if that one would have gone down, that was pit level, the kind of rim attack that we saw there from Cooper Flagg. I don't know how teams stop him. I've said that over the last few weeks. He's having to stop himself by missing these shots because, yeah, you look at what NC State was able to do. They had a out-of-body experience shooting the ball to kind of keep them in this game, and yet they couldn't stop Cooper Flagg, and that ultimately was the big difference.
It seems like Kevin Keats has John Shire's number for some odd reason. I mean, I think John's 3-3 now against State in his 3 years as head coach. But ultimately, no matter how abnormal this performance was for State, there was one thing that they couldn't fix, and it was how they couldn't match up with Cooper Flagg. When you look at the defensive assignments, State either had to put a guard on him or they had to go with Ben Middlebrooks or Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, and neither of those guys are quick enough to stay with him even remotely. And so it's pick your poison. Do you want him to go over top of you? Do you want him to go around you? And there's really no in between. That's what he's going to do.
Great game all around from Cooper Flagg and several other Blue Devils who contributed to the scoring efforts for Duke to pick up a big win like this. NC State in the previous 2 games shot 5 of 34 from three-point range. They finished 7 of 11 in the first half from 3. So 7 makes in the first half, having made just 5 total in the prior 2 games. At one point, they are at 10 of 20. So 50% from 3. I mean, that's what it takes to pull off an upset like this. They covered. It was a 21.5-point spread, but that's such a big hole that they've got to make up, and it takes some of those big shooting performances to even give yourself a chance, and NC State got it, man.
State played a great game, and I think that it's similar to what Wake did this past weekend. Both teams played a good game. And as much as we have reaped Cooper's, his praises, I think that there's a little bit of a negative side to what we're seeing in the last couple, because yes, Cooper's doing well. Yes, he's bailing them out. He's winning games. He's putting the team on his shoulders. But I'm getting a little bit concerned about, like, what happens if that young man has an off day one time? What if it happens? Who's going to step up and be that go-to guy that you absolutely know can put up numbers? I mean, Con Knippel did well today, but he's, like you mentioned earlier in the episode, he's had games where he doesn't.
Yeah.
Chris Proctor has certainly struggled as of late. He had a good game against Boston College, but I think other than that, he's been pretty poor over the last 4 or 5 games. So that's something to think about.
Duke picks up a win, 74-64 over NC State. We have those just awful memories of the meetings with NC State at the end of last year. So for a while, it felt like, oh my gosh, are they going to do this again? I mean, wow, to jump out to a 35-22 lead in the first half. Duke's able to close and cut it to just a 4-point deficit in the second half. And then they take an 8-point lead right out of the gates, a 12-0 run to get that second half started. And NC State goes over 8 minutes of basketball time. If you factor in halftime, it's like nearly an hour of real life that they're not able to score against Duke. What do you think was the biggest difference there, Ben?
Well, the defensive intensity is absolutely the difference. And I think that had to be John Shire's message to the team, because obviously they gave him some looks from 3. That was part of the game plan coming out of the gate. It didn't work. And so Shire told them, you've got to get out on those shooters. you got to deny shots. And I mean, it wasn't just that State was missing shots. They were airballing shots. They were getting down to the end of shot clock. They couldn't get anything off at all. And so the defense was just absolutely stellar. They definitely had a fire lit under them during halftime.
Yeah, rightfully so. They took the coach's message to heart. As we take a look at some of the standouts here, again, Cooper Flagg with the 28 points on 8 of 17 shooting from the floor, 1 of 4 from three-point range. The free throw shot continues to improve game by game, going 11 of 13 from the line in 37 minutes. You look at Flagg, Proctor, Knipple, and James, all those guys playing at least 33 minutes. So a game in which the bench wasn't asked to do a whole lot, Ben.
No, and it seems like that's increasingly becoming the case outside of maybe Mason Gillis. Mason Gillis has had some really big contributions lately, especially against Wake Forest. But, you know, you look at Isaiah Evans, and there's not been much there lately.
Yeah, only
Caleb
3
Foster,
minutes in the game.
Yeah, just 3 minutes. Yeah, and then Caleb Foster's been falling off steadily throughout the season, which I wish weren't the case, but
right.
It is ultimately. And so you look at the starters; they're the guys that have been carrying it. And maybe that is the little bit of a concerning thing that for Duke, increasingly as the season's progressed, they're becoming a little more top-heavy offensively than they were earlier in the year.
Look at these numbers, though. For NC State, they finished 10 of 22 from three-point range. We haven't talked about Duke three-point shooting in this game, where the Blue Devils find a way to score 74 points. Thankfully, 24 of them came from the free throw line. But Duke goes just 4 of 20 from three-point range, 20%. That matches their lowest total on the year. Against Kentucky, the Blue Devils made just 4 three-pointers. But in every other game this season, they had made at least 8. Duke just made 4 three-pointers against NC State, still found a way to win by 10. I don't see poor shooting nights like this coming along for Duke this often. They've just proven all year long to be a much better shooting team than this.
Yeah, you kind of doubt that those shooting performances are going to happen very frequently. I mean, it's possible it happens again. Obviously, it happened before against Kentucky. The big difference in this one versus Kentucky is that free throw shooting. I think earlier in the year, Cooper Flagg kind of a middling free throw shooter in the first 5 or 6 games of the season. Now you look at him, 11 of 13. You look at the team barely missing any free throws at all and almost 30 attempts. That's remarkable. I mean, I think we can't brush that under the rug in any way. Everybody says they're free throws. You got to make your free throws, but you don't usually make the free throws at that high of a rate. And that is ultimately the reason why Duke was able to win this game.
Keys to the game, we talked about NC State having one of the best turnover rates in the entire ACC. They also lead the ACC in fast break points. Duke turned the basketball over just 10 times compared to 13 for NC State. NC State and Duke both had 17 points off turnovers. And then when you look at what they were able to do getting out and run, just 10 fast break points for NC State. And the majority of those came in the first half. Meanwhile, Duke got out and ran for 25 points. Controlling the tempo and then adding in, in that second half, when you need to switch things up a little bit, Duke's able to go zone to really throw off NC State. They were just able to give them so many different looks.
Yeah, that zone's been interesting because I don't know how much they really practiced that before this game, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's not like they've had a whole lot of time to practice since the Wake Forest game. It's like, wow, this worked on Saturday night and then Sunday, and now you're back at it on Monday to play again. Yeah,
and it's working really well. And the thing that really worked well today is, especially in the second half, State wasn't getting the looks they wanted. Like you mentioned, they weren't able to push the break. They weren't able to cut through the lane like they normally like to. They have driving guards. That's the way State plays. But they weren't able to get that going today. And so even when they were hitting shots in the second half, they were sort of these desperation ISO threes by Trey Parker or something like that. And he'd hit them because he had a out-of-body experience today. But, you'll live with that if you're Duke. If the best thing you're giving them is a Trey Parker contested three, you're doing a pretty good job defensively.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I used to go to comedy shows all the time. Me and my friends in college used to go all the time. It's a blast. You don't even need, alcohol. You just go and have fun and laugh. It's a comedy show. That's the whole point. Just go have fun. Gametime has a new called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
The Florida Gators might be adding a national champion to their roster in 2025.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
The Florida Gators are bringing in Hero Kanu for a visit, or he was starting his visit yesterday. Got to Gainesville on Sunday because I realized that the insiders have asked questions about it, and I've seen people on Twitter go, I thought he got here Sunday. He got to Gainesville on Sunday, but started the visit on Monday. So just to clear up confusion, that's what it is. Ohio State backup defensive tackle, which, I mean, me bringing that up immediately, this is one of those outlier portal players, we'll say. Me bringing up immediately that Hero Kanu is a backup defensive tackle. I know there's going to be people that yell about how you can't bring in backups, how, what's another common one we're going to hear in the comment section? Oh, bringing in a guy that couldn't start on a national championship team does not mean that you're achieving national champion status, right? Because if he was good enough to help them, then he'd be good enough to help us. But if he's not, then he's not. Bad argument, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. But yes, by saying he's a backup automatically kind of disqualifies him from the, is it a good transfer portal addition? Because you know our general rules here. 1, proven contributor at his previous spot. Obviously, Hero Kanu does not have that. He played less than 10 snaps per game. Okay, I want to throw that one out there. For the entire season, he played less than 10 snaps on average per game. That's including the fact that he started a game. I think it was the Marshall game he started. So including the fact that he started, he on average played less than 10 snaps per game. That's not great, right? So yes, he's not a proven productive player at his previous location. So no for the first measure. And the second measure is, has he been in college for less than a year? The answer there is also no. Hero Kanu has been in college for a few years now. He's got a lot of experience in a developmental process that Ohio State has gone through, because when he got to Ohio State, Ryan Day had not won a national championship yet. Now he's won a national champion, and I think national championship, and I do think that matters as far as the mental fortitude you've got, right? You were there to experience it. Like Hero Kanu can come in and tell everybody, this is what national champions do. And no one on the roster can tell him, no, it's not, because no one on the roster has done it. New addition of the defensive coaching staff has done it, but that's beside the point right now. He hasn't done it in the portal era, in the NIL era. But I would say that Hero Kanu, if he's going to be a Florida Gator, would come in to join a rotation. Okay? Personally, I don't think he's someone, from watching his film, I don't think that Hero Kanu is someone that you should watch, and if he were to commit to the Florida Gators, I don't think he's someone that you should look at and say, hey, this guy's coming here to start. Like maybe in his mind, he's coming in here to start. And to be frank, he should, in his mind, be coming in here to start, because that's like what a competitor would do, right? I want to come here and take a starting job. But as a fan, I would say he could come in here and start. But if he commits to Florida, I'm not coming in here and saying that's your starting nose tackle. I can't do that. Watching his film, seeing what we saw, I'm going to look at him and say, hey, he's going to come in here and compete for a starting spot. But I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, that's your starting nose tackle. I can't do it. Like, I need to see more from everybody involved in that battle But right now, I can't say if he joined, I can't say there would be a favorite. I would say, hey, that's an open battle at the position right now, which is a good thing. I don't want people to go, oh, we don't know who's going to be our starting nose tackle. We're in such a rough spot. Undecided doesn't mean bad. Okay. So I'll say that. And also, I will say this is something that has kind of answered and calmed some of the concerns that I may have for adding a player like Hero Kanu, who again, backup, got passed up by a freshman this year with Ohio State. Again, he still rotated in, but very infrequently because of that. And on paper, not a good portal addition. But the flip side, and the thing that calms my suspicions, calms my concerns, calms my doubts, we'll say, is that it's not just Florida interested in Hero Kanu, right? And it's not just Florida and one other school. This isn't him deciding between Florida and Vanderbilt, right? This is him deciding between Florida, Georgia, Texas A&M. Like, all of those teams had better years than the Florida Gators, right? Georgia and Texas made the CFP. Texas A&M had a pretty good year, beat the crap out of the Florida Gators. All those teams had pretty good years. That's who you're competing with for Hero Kanu. So that's one of those things where, like we talk about with high school recruiting as well. When you have a player that you disagree with the ranking, or even if you do agree with the ranking, if the offer list doesn't match that ranking, to me, the offer list matters more. And with Hero Kanu, we could say, hey, he's a backup, so he doesn't fit the guardrails, we'll call them. The guardrails of production or lack of experience, or youth, we'll say, eligibility remaining. But teams with championship aspirations are actively recruiting him, actively trying to get him on campus, actively trying to get him on the rosters. So teams with championship aspirations have that. Does it matter what I think about him? Does it matter what you think about him? Because there's two coaches there at Georgia, Texas A&M. There's two coaches in that bunch, and you can include Florida in it. That number doesn't change then. But two coaches there that make $10 million per year, over $10 million per year. Two coaches in there that were in the CFP. Those guys still want him.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. The one bet you could look at, $5 on the NBA tonight. The Lakers head east to play the Sixers. FanDuel likes LeBron and company and has LA favored by 4 in Philly. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus. FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Utah just lost one of their projected starters entering the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes.
Because the transfer portal is supposed to be closed, but college football rules right now, it's all kind of a mess in general. So Kenan Johnson, the Georgia Tech transfer who came over to Utah in the 24 portal and then suffered an injury in the first game of the season, said he was going to come back to Utah. Well, I guess he didn't put out a statement, but at the time, he didn't enter the portal. He was on the spring roster. We all thought he was going to be coming back, and a late addition into the portal. This is a guy who had a ton of experience when he was at Georgia Tech. I mean, he's played in 46 career D1 football games, 11 starts at Georgia Tech too. And I mean, overall, if you look at his career too, this is a guy who had a season, who has made over the course overall 5 tackles, forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups. Overall, he's added impressive resume. And when you lose a lot, like a Cameron Calhoun to the transfer portal as well, you lose Maya Vaughn to the NFL draft. this is definitely a loss that hurts to lose a veteran in a room where you're already replacing guys. Utah can replace him, but it was Kenan Johnson was one of the guys who I would have had as a week 1 starter, probably, Elijah.
Yeah, 100%. I think he would have definitely had a Cam Calhoun level impact on the team if he would have stayed and had been, the same as he was before his injury. Obviously, we don't know how he will play, after, because his injury was really bad. So we don't know how he'll play, but let's say he was, back to his old self. I think he would have a Cam Calhoun level impact on the team if he would have stayed. And I mean, he obviously, when he transferred to Utah, he's coming off of his best season of his collegiate career. I think 29 total tackles. He had, if I'm not mistaken, like he had his first career interception as well. And so, he was really kicking things into gear. And even in the first game against Southern Utah University, you saw like he made an impact in the short time he played. He had 3 total tackles. And so it's like he was destined to be, a star with Utah's program. And even Kyle Whittingham, after that game, I remember him saying like, this is a massive loss for the room because of how much of an impact he does have. And so I think it really is a surprising announcement, especially in one of the last press conferences of, the 2024 cycle, it was confirmed that they were in talks with Kenan to actually stay with the team and that he showed interest in staying with the team and playing once his rehab was up. And so this is a complete 180. And when I found out, when my editor sent me the link of the announcement, I was completely in shock.
Yeah, I think a lot of Utah fans were just, especially once again, based on the timing of it, it caught everyone off guard. But this is the case. Johnson is gone. So now it's like, okay, how do you move forward? And the injury concerns were real if Johnson was going to be ready for fall camp. I think he would have played most of this coming season is what it sounds like, but it's always hard to know with the injuries when they're not reported. So as for Utah defensive backs, the corners who are going to be starting for this team on the outside, you look at it, Smith Snowden is the best corner on this roster. Then you have Elijah Davis, and he was a really good starter last year too. But the other guys who contributed the most, Cameron Calhoun and Zamiah Vaughn, they're gone. So who steps up now? Well, this is why you go into the portal and you add transfer help at cornerback. There's Blake Cotton, the UC Davis transfer, over 30 games played, 9 career passes defended. Rock Caldwell, the Gardner City Community College transfer, played in 11 games last year, 7 pass breakups and 6 interceptions. I know it's the community college level, but that's like the type of production you want to see before you make the leap up. Then Don Sanders Jr. was at A&M, Cal Poly before that. He has career 5 interceptions and 10 pass breakups too. And that's without even mentioning the depth pieces, like the guys we're not talking about right now. I was not talking about Elijah Davis at this time last year being a major contributor for this team. He ends up being so and does very well. So while Johnson, he is a loss, with Sharif Shaw's coaching, Morgan Scalley also doing just a good job helping out the secondary too. Based on the transfers that Utah has, you're going to have hits and misses in the portal. Utah needs 2 of these guys to basically step up and help Snowden and Davis out. I feel like they have that in this room currently.
Right. And that's exactly why I don't think it's a necessarily massive blow for Utah, is because, for the longest time, Utah and that defensive staff has had an incredible resume with developing talent and finding talent and making them premier defensive backs in either the conference or in the entire nation. And so you named all those guys, and then you specified how we weren't hearing about Scooby Davis at this time last year. And so I'm sure there's going to be another case like that this year, or we'll have one of the guys that transferred in, be the guy who steps up and is our Kenan Johnson or is our Cam Calhoun, and we don't even know it yet. And so I think that's also why I'm really excited for spring ball to start up whenever that does, because it's going to be interesting to see how these guys develop. I'm really looking forward to Saunders just because of his height. And, obviously he was talented enough to, go make the leap from Cal Poly to Texas A&M. You got to have some talent in order to do that. And so there's a lot of guys I'm excited for. Obviously it sucks because it's almost like an Anthony Woods situation, where if Anthony Woods was healthy this past year, he would have been the 1-2 tandem back with Bernard. And so, it sucks, but you just got to realize that they plan for this. They plan for departures at key positions, and they bandaged it up. And I don't see any regression maybe in the short term, because on paper we know what we had. But I think by the start of the season, we're going to be like, we're just fine at this position.
Yeah, and even if some of these guys take some time, like when they're starting to get going, Johnson probably would have been the same because
Right.
of that injury, as we discussed too. So last thing I want to talk about the cornerback room real quick is I do feel like Smith Snowden is ready to be cornerback one. I said it already a little bit earlier. He's a guy who's going into year 3 now, played a little bit as a freshman, but a lot more last season. 48 tackles, 8 passes deflected, 2 interceptions, and even had a pick 6 too. That last one against UCF too. Morgan Scalley said they're going to move him to the outside. I think that's the right move. I think he's ready. I think he is the Clark Phillips, the whatever great Utah corner you want to throw out there. Maybe not exactly Jalen Johnson, maybe not the level of Clark Phillips even too, but he is a worthy cornerback one with the strong lineage that Utah has at that position. He feels ready. His reactions, his ball skills, he's a baller. I think he's ready. I think he's going to be one of the best corners in the pack in the Big 12 in 2025.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think Snowden is so ready to take that leap. And, as the year progressed, we saw him really get into his own and grow into a premier cornerback. I think with another spring to develop further and build upon his already impressive season 2024 campaign, I think he's definitely primed to be the CB1. And I also think that it makes it even better that he turned down BYU in order to stay with Utah to be the CB1. So it's going to be, I think he's completely ready. He's all in with the program, and I think he's going to take a leadership role too with the team, which is really needed after, some of the departures we had.
Yeah, good. Yeah, those were those reports that both Snowden and Barton were guys that were also trying to be lured into the portal. So you're not wrong. It was big that Utah was able to get Snowden to stay because they're hoping Snowden's going to become a Utah legend.